This is a Jaecoo J7, which you already know from the title of this video. What you might not know though is that Jaecoo is Chery's premium brand, kind of like Lexus and Toyota or Genesis and Hyundai. What you also might not know is that this car, this midsize SUV, is aiming to maybe take away some buyers from cars like the Toyota RAV4 or the Mazda CX-5 at their top end with some premium features and a starting price of under $40,000.
As well as the car itself being in pre-launch unfinalised condition, some of the details around Jaecoo's launch in Australia are also yet to be confirmed. One of those details is the exact pricing of the J7. We're told it'll start from between $35,000 and $40,000, and for that price, the list of features seems pretty decent, even for the entry-grade J7 core. So far we only have details of this and the other two-wheel drive variant, the Track, though we're told at least two all-wheel drive variants and a plug-in hybrid are coming too. The Track two-wheel drive steps up from the core and will likely start from more than $40,000. Both have synthetic leather seats and trim. The seats themselves are power adjustable up front. There's a 13.2-inch multimedia touchscreen, but the Track adds extra kit like heated front seats, an upgraded 8-speaker Sony sound system, and a wireless phone charging pad. The full list of features is at carsguide.com.au and a link should be below for you.
In terms of the design, the Jaecoo J7 has clear premium intentions, but like I said, the price point is a little bit less so. We've got things like these huge vertical chrome strips down the grille, these checkered flag DRLs up here that are kind of nice and slim. It's all sort of giving a little bit Range Rover, but not quite. There's also the headlights down here, things like the side of the car with some actually pretty reasonably sized wheels that aren't very uncomfortable, but we'll come to that later. You've got things like black paint down the side of the car at the pillars to make it look a little bit two-tone, same thing for the mirror, plus later on there'll be things like sunroofs, things like that sort of make this car look and feel a little bit more premium even from the outside as well. And then there are some probably things you might find unexpected at this price point, things like the pop-out door handles as well, that sort of just add a little bit more of a premium feel to this car. It's all that sort of showroom stuff that might actually draw more buyers than you might think for a new Chinese brand. From in here, it's kind of a bit of a minimalist vibe at first, but there's a lot of different materials that sort of, even the people at Jaecoo said kind of want to make you touch everything, and they're all quite soft touch materials. It doesn't really get hard, scratchy plastic till you're down here at the bottom of the door where your hands don't really go anywhere. There's this sort of brushed aluminium look stuff. There's this giant screen here, sort of soft leather feeling stuff around here. Even your, rests for your arms and things like that. The seat themselves are actually really comfortable. Ergonomically, it's a pretty good space in here. I would say that functionally, something that I'm always annoyed by is everything being controlled by a big screen, but in terms of screens, this one's actually okay. There's some shortcuts to easily get to places you would need for things like, your navigation or vehicle controls. There's one button that sort of brings up the whole list, and even though it's a lot to scroll through, it's all quite clear. The other thing is the driver display is pretty good as well. It has that kind of new-ish sort of trend of showing other road users, and the speed is quite obvious where you're looking, so you don't really get distracted by information that you don't need. Another thing in here that's quite good is that there are still physical controls for things like drive mode, and the steering wheel has buttons that you can actually press even though they kind of need you to have your thumb in the right place to do it. It all still sort of is relatively easy to control. You don't get too distracted by anything. And then even though while you're on the road, maybe some of the driver assist stuff could be a little bit better tuned, it feels like you're sort of always in control and you know what you're doing in the car. I'm sitting behind my own driving position here in the back, and I actually have heaps of knee room. My feet and toes actually have space in front of the seat under me as well. And my headroom, obviously I'm just under 6 foot and there's heaps of space up here. It's a pretty spacious interior. The downside to the back seat is that they're not super adjustable, like this is the only position I can have it in. But I've still got a little vent here that I kind of need to share with the other passengers, an armrest here with cup holders, and some pretty comfortable places to lean my arms as well.
Behind that, there's about 410 litres of storage according to international specs, and even a space-saver spare tyre, which is a big plus in our book. Both variants of the J7 two-wheel drive are, you guessed it, front-wheel drive, with power coming to the wheels from a 1.6 litre turbo-petrol 4-cylinder engine via a 7-speed dual-clutch transmission. The engine produces 137 kilowatts and 275 newton meters, and if that sounds familiar, it is. It's the same engine as the Chery Tiggo 7.
I'm not going to get too into the specific details of how this car drives because there's a proper launch happening soon where there'll be more variants of this and they'll be in a slightly better production spec. However, what I can say is that in terms of the way this thing drives, and especially for the price point, it's not too bad. There are still some little issues with the driver assist that I think maybe just need to be tuned a little bit better. It's things like the lane centering when you're sort of looking at the lane assist, or things like just the way it brakes and accelerates to sort of achieve a certain speed. But in terms of the actual suspension, the steering, and the way this car handles, it's all right. We haven't really given it a proper fang on the roads here at the launch. It's just been a preview drive, but I'd probably say that the suspension in this actually seems to handle Australian roads pretty well. Even though it's not incredibly soft, I'd say it's probably on the firmer side. It sort of doesn't really waft, and it doesn't let the car lean or pitch too much, which is sort of reassuring. The brakes feel all right, and the steering feels all right. Everything's kind of just happening as I expect. There's no surprises, and that's a really good thing. It means the car is pretty well sorted out to do as you'd expect and feels safe to drive. It feels like a pretty well sorted thing.
Jaecoo claims the J7 has a 7 litre per 100 k's consumption rate, and international specs have its tank at a 51 litre capacity, so it should, in perfect conditions, be able to top 700 kilometers per tank. There's no ANCAP rating for the Jaecoo J7 yet, though the brand is expecting a 5-star result. There are 7 airbags as standard for the core two-wheel drive, those being driver and front passenger, front side and front center, as well as side curtain airbags. The track, however, gets an extra for the driver's knees. That's not the only safety difference between models, however. The core gets a healthy list of features, but the track adds some useful extras, including a surround view parking camera system, front and rear parking sensors, plus a child safety lock for the rear doors. A few other important things are standard though, things like rear cross traffic alert and braking. Surround view cameras can be pricey, but the extra airbag, parking sensors, and child locks seem odd not to include as standard given the otherwise impressive standard features list in the J7. The full list of safety kit can be found in the written review at carsguide.com.au.
While I did have it in driver assist mode, things like the accelerator and brake, like I mentioned, were a little bit jarring, but the accelerator specifically felt like it was sort of jumping in increments. It's sort of accelerating and then hitting a speed and then accelerating and hitting a speed until it reached where I had it set. And then the brakes, every time they engaged, there was kind of a crunching noise, and that could have just been the fact that this isn't quite production ready. It's not the sort of exact spec that you'll find in an Australian showroom, but something to keep an eye out if you do take one of these for a test drive.
Jaecoo Australia hasn't confirmed any warranty or servicing costs yet, but given parent company Chery's 7-year unlimited kilometre warranty, we'll guess it'll probably be competitive. Interestingly, Jaecoo won't be attached to existing Chery dealerships in most cases, so servicing might not follow Chery's pricing and scheduling style.
I'm going to save any particularly specific judgments for this car until we know more local details, especially something like the pricing. But from what I'm seeing, and if the starting price for a car like this is under 40 grand, I think it's probably going to draw in a fair few buyers. It's got a lot of showroom appeal, and to sit in and drive, for first impressions, this thing's not bad.